They say he was dead the moment they threw him out. Let them say it. The mountain had other plans.
The wind had no mercy in the mountains of Kaldor. It cut through fur and chainmail alike, as though the cold itself had decided to punish anyone foolish enough to climb so high. And yet, Aldric climbed. He had nowhere else to go. Once, he had been the greatest shield-bearer in the kingdom of Varnath, a man whose name was spoken in the same breath as honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. He had stood at the king's side through 17 battles, had taken arrows meant for princes, had buried brothers in arms with his own hands.
But none of that mattered now.
A single false accusation, whispered by a jealous lord into a foolish king's ear, had stripped him of everything. His title, his lands, his name. They had exiled him at dawn, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a broken sword at his hip. Let the mountains take him, the Lord had sneered. If the cold doesn't kill him, the beasts will. Aldric had simply turned his back and walked north. Not out of defeat, out of dignity. For 3 weeks he wandered. He ate berries when he could find them, melted snow for water, slept in shallow caves with one eye open. His body weakened, but something inside him, something ancient and stubborn, refused to break. He had survived wars. He would survive this. It was on the 23rd day that he found the nest. He had been following a narrow ridge when the path suddenly opened into a wide, rocky plateau sheltered on 3 sides by jagged stone walls. And there, nestled between 2 boulders like a secret the mountain had been keeping, was a dragon's nest. Not a great fire beast's lair. This was something quieter, older. The nest was woven from branches, dried moss, and what looked like the woven remnants of ancient tapestries. Inside it, 3 eggs the color of storm clouds rested together, each one as large as a child's torso. And beside them, barely breathing, lay a dragon. She was silver gray, her scales dulled by exhaustion, her amber eyes half closed with something that looked terrifyingly like surrender. She was enormous, easily 30 feet from snout to tail, but in that moment, she looked fragile. One of her wings was badly torn. Deep gashes ran along her flank, still dark with dried blood. Something had attacked her, and recently. She turned one amber eye toward Aldric as he stepped closer. A low rumble rose from her chest, warning, not aggression. She was protecting her eggs, even now, even barely conscious. Aldric stood still. He did not raise his broken sword. He did not run. Instead, he sat down in the cold grass, a few feet away, and looked at her. "I'm not here to take anything," he said quietly. "I don't have anywhere to be." The rumbling slowed. The amber eye watched him, suspicious but tired. He didn't leave. That night, Aldric built a small fire, close enough to share warmth, far enough not to frighten her. He had nothing to offer except presence, so he offered that. When dawn came, he went down the ridge and found mountain herbs he recognized from old battlefield medicine, ground them against a rock with water, and returned. He pressed the poultice gently to the worst of her wounds, moving slowly, speaking quietly the entire time. She let him. It took 5 days before she stopped watching him as a threat. It took 10 before she let him touch her snout without flinching. By the 2nd week, she would rest her great head near him in the evenings, and he would sit against it, back against her warm scales, watching the stars come out over the mountain peaks. He named her Soul Vein, light that survives the storm. He hunted for her when she was too weak to fly. He kept the fire burning every night. He talked to her about his past, about the king's betrayal, about the brothers he had lost and the battles he had won. She could not respond in words, but she listened with a stillness that felt like understanding. The eggs began to stir in the 4th week. Aldric was there when they hatched, 3 small dragons, storm gray like their mother, each one no bigger than a large dog, tumbling into the cold air with wide amber eyes and wobbly legs. They looked at Aldric immediately. He laughed, the first real laugh he had given in months. They climbed over him. They bit his boots. The smallest one fell asleep on his lap and refused to be moved. Solvain watched all of this and made a sound he had never heard from her before. Deep, slow, rhythmic, almost like a hum. It vibrated through the mountain stone beneath him. He realized, with a tightening in his chest, that it was the sound of trust. But the mountains were not finished with him. On a gray morning at the start of the 5th week, he heard them, soldiers. 6 of them, bearing the crest of the Lord who had destroyed him. They had tracked him, either to make sure he was dead or to finish the work themselves. They came onto the plateau with swords drawn. They found Aldric standing in front of a nest. He had no armor. His sword was broken. He was half-starved and wind-burned, and had not slept a full night in over a month. He stood anyway. "Move aside, exile," the captain sneered. "Dragon eggs fetch a fine price. Step away, and we might let you live." Aldric said nothing. He planted his feet. He raised his broken blade. He had not fought to protect a king who deserved it in a long time, but he would fight to protect one who did. The fight was short and brutal, and he gave everything he had. He took 2 deep cuts across his ribs before his legs finally gave out. He fell to one knee in the frost, the broken sword still in his hand, between the soldiers and the nest. He did not move from that spot. And then the sky cracked open. Solvain rose from behind the boulder where she had been watching, no longer wounded, no longer weak, her torn wing fully healed, her scales blazing like iron pulled from a forge. She was not the fragile creature he had found bleeding in the cold. She was something ancient and terrible and magnificent. The soldiers ran without a word, stumbling over each other down the ridge, disappearing into the mountain mist. Solvain landed beside Aldric and lowered her great head to the ground, pressing her snout gently against his chest. He rested his hand on her scales. "We're all right," he whispered. "We're all right." He did not die that day, though it was close. He healed slowly, kept warm by the bodies of 4 dragons who refused to leave his side. When spring finally broke over Kaldor, travelers on the northern roads began to tell a strange story of a man who lived in the high peaks with a silver dragon, of 3 young dragons that circled his fire at night, of an exiled warrior who had become something the mountains had never seen before. Not a king, not a conqueror, a guardian. In the years that followed, lords and kings sent messengers to the plateau of Kaldor. They came with gifts and requests and desperate needs. Aldric heard them all from his stone seat, with Solvain at his back and 3 dragons curled at his feet. He had no title. He had no kingdom. But his name, the one they had tried to take from him, was spoken now across every land from the frozen north to the warm southern seas. Not as an exile, as a legend.